I'd like to look now at urinary frequency. Many men in their 50s and 60s find they have to go to the toilet urinary-wise maybe 3 or 4 times a night. Now that is indicative of an inflamed prostate. You see, the prostate gland is like about the size of a small walnut, and the urinary tubes go through the prostate. So if the prostate's inflamed, it can squeeze off the urinary flow. So an inflamed prostate can be helped by a herb called saw pimento. Saw pimento reduces inflammation of the prostate gland. Also stinging nettle tea can be drunk, and small willow leaf. They are probably the 3 main herbs that are known to help with the prostate.
There's a reason you've never heard this before, and it's not because it isn't true. The reality is, if men over 40 knew what you're about to hear, the billion-dollar prostate and pharmaceutical industries could collapse overnight. Right now, millions of men are trapped in a cycle of doctor visits, costly medications, side effects, and sleepless nights from constant bathroom trips, without realizing that the biggest culprit isn't age, it's food. Yes, the food sitting in your fridge and pantry right now may be directly fueling prostate growth. Recent studies have shown that by cutting out just 9 specific foods, men saw up to a 54% reduction in prostate size, improved urinary flow, and a dramatic drop in nighttime awakenings. Think about that. More than half the swelling gone, not from surgery, not from lifelong pills, but simply from eliminating the foods that are quietly destroying your prostate health. And here's the shocking part. Most of these foods are considered healthy. They're pushed in commercials, stocked in every grocery store, and even recommended in diets. But for men with prostate concerns, they act like gasoline on a fire. And the food industry, they don't want this getting out, because these 9 foods are some of the most profitable in the world. That ends today. In this video, we're breaking down the 9 most dangerous foods for your prostate, ranked from number 9 to number 1. Avoiding them could mean fewer bathroom trips, better sleep, stronger confidence, and a return to the life you thought was slipping away. Every point we share here is backed by solid scientific evidence, and you can find the references linked in the description. Before we get started, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and how long you've been dealing with prostate issues, whether it's frequent urination, weak flow, or discomfort. We read every single one, and your story may inspire another man watching right now. Now let's dive into number 9 and why it could be the hidden reason your prostate hasn't improved no matter what you've tried. Main script body. Number 9, processed meats. Processed meats include bacon, sausages, hot dogs, salami, and many deli-style cuts. These foods are preserved or flavored using curing, smoking, or the addition of nitrates and nitrites. 2 mechanisms matter most for prostate and general health risk: formation of nitroso compounds and promotion of chronic inflammation. When nitrates and nitrites are present and the meat is cooked or metabolized, chemical reactions can produce N-nitroso compounds. Those compounds can damage DNA or otherwise interfere with normal cell repair. Separately, processed meats tend to be calorie-dense, high in saturated fat and salt, and low in protective nutrients such as fiber, antioxidants, and phytochemicals. That combination promotes body-wide inflammation and metabolic stress, both of which are linked to tissue growth and abnormal cell behavior in many organs, prostate included. Quantitative signals from large reviews show processed meat is a public health concern. Global cancer agencies classify processed meat as carcinogenic to humans, and other pooled analyses point to measurable increased cancer risks with regular intake. One widely cited figure is that each 50-gram daily portion of processed meat is associated with about an 18% greater risk of colorectal cancer. That same preserved meat chemistry and inflammatory pattern are why analysts flag processed meat as a sensible target when lowering overall cancer and inflammation load in the diet. For prostate specifically, some population studies and cohort analyses have found positive links between processed meat intake and prostate risk or progression. While not every study shows identical numbers, the biological pathways, nitroso compounds, oxidative stress, inflammation are consistent and plausible. Practical numbers. Cutting processed meat from daily to occasional consumption can reduce daily intake of added nitrates and nitrites and lower lifetime exposure to meat-derived mutagens. Swapping a single 50-gram processed meat portion each day for plant protein or fish reduces exposure to nitrates, saturated fat, and heme iron. And because processed meat intake tends to cluster with other risky behaviours, lowering it often improves overall diet quality too. For those tracking targets, aim to limit processed meat to no more than 1 occasional serving per week and prefer fresh, minimally processed protein sources on most days. Number 8, full-fat dairy products. Full-fat dairy covers whole milk, heavy cream, full-fat cheeses, some yogurts, and cream-based products. The two main concerns are, 1, the hormone and growth factor content of dairy, and 2, the high saturated fat load that accompanies full-fat products. Milk contains naturally occurring hormones and nutrient signals that can raise circulating levels of insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1, when consumed in higher amounts. IGF-1 is a growth signal in the body. Higher average IGF-1 levels are associated with increased rates of cell proliferation. In several large population comparisons, men with higher dairy intake had modestly higher rates of prostate cancer or disease progression. For example, moving from low to high dairy intake, roughly 20 grams per day to about 430 grams per day in some cohort comparisons, was associated with an approximate 20 to 30% higher relative risk for prostate outcomes in those analyses. That gives a concrete sense of scale. Saturated fat in full-fat dairy also encourages systemic inflammation when taken in excess over time and can worsen lipid and metabolic profiles, which indirectly affects hormone balance and prostate tissue behavior. In practice, a meaningful intervention is to replace full-fat dairy with lower-fat or plant-based alternatives on most days. That change directly cuts saturated fat intake and lowers the average daily IGF-1 stimulus from dairy. For numbers you can act on, a standard cup, 240 milliliters, of whole milk contains roughly 8 grams total fat, of which about 5 grams is saturated fat. Switching to low-fat milk cuts that saturated fat by 2/3 while keeping protein and calcium. Many population analyses found a dose-response pattern. The highest consumers, top decile, had around 20 to 30% higher relative risk for certain prostate outcomes versus the lowest consumers. Those are relative numbers. Absolute risk depends on age, family history, and other lifestyle factors. If someone drinks multiple cups of whole milk daily or consumes lots of full-fat cheese, moving to low-fat or plant options can materially lower the cumulative hormonal and saturated fat exposure over months and years, which is a reasonable strategy to lower prostate risk factors tied to diet. Number 7, red meats, beef, lamb, pork. Red meat is a major source of high-quality protein and micronutrients, but the way red meat is consumed and prepared changes risk. 2 distinct issues deserve attention. A, fat composition and inflammatory effect, and B, chemical mutagens produced by high-temperature cooking. Red meats often contain higher amounts of saturated fat than lean poultry or many fish, which contributes to higher LDL cholesterol and systemic inflammation when eaten frequently in excess. Second, high-temperature grilling, frying, or charring produces heterocyclic amines, HCAS, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs. Lab studies show HCAS and PAHs can cause DNA damage and promote cancer in animals. Human studies link well-done red meat and high HC, exposure to biomarkers of DNA damage in prostate tissue, and higher rates of aggressive prostate disease in some cohorts. For scale, well-done or heavily charred red meat has higher HCAA/PAH levels than lightly cooked meat. Marinating, lower heat, or using other cooking methods reduces those compounds substantially. Population synthesis data often report small to moderate increases in risk. For heavy consumers of well-done red meat, relative risk estimates for certain prostate outcomes trend upward, though numbers vary by study design. A practical numerical approach is to limit red meat to 1 to 2 moderate portions per week, one portion approximately 85 to 100 grams cooked. Prefer lean cuts and avoid charring. Swap-in options include fatty fish twice weekly for omega-3s, skinless poultry, legumes, and plant proteins. Those swaps reduce saturated fat intake and remove repeated exposure to high-heat meat mutagens. If you regularly grill over very high heat, consider turning temperatures down, using a drip tray to avoid smoke contact, and trimming visible fat to reduce PAH formation. Taken together, these changes lower measurable exposures linked to oxidative stress and DNA damage that are thought to accelerate prostate tissue changes in susceptible men. Number 6, fried foods. Fried foods, deep-fried restaurant fries, battered products, many snack chips, and packaged fried snacks raise risk through 3 pathways. 1, extra calories and unhealthy fats. 2, trans fats, or highly oxidized oils formed during repeated frying. And 3, heat-driven toxic byproducts such as advanced glycation end products, AGEs, and aldehydes. Deep frying increases energy density. A portion of fries or battered chicken can contain 2 to 3 times the calories of a steamed or grilled portion of the same weight. That calorie load accelerates weight gain and fat accumulation when eaten frequently. Fried foods also tend to contain partially hydrogenated oils or oils that have been heated repeatedly in commercial frying operations. Those oils contain trans fat residues and oxidation products that raise inflammation, raise LDL cholesterol, and impair endothelial and metabolic function. AGEs form when sugars and proteins or fats react at high heat. Dietary AGEs can add to the body's oxidative stress burden. Observational studies linking high fried food consumption to higher rates of many metabolic diseases also show signals for higher prostate cancer risk or more aggressive prostate disease in consumers of lots of fried food, although effect sizes vary. For a practical baseline, reducing fried food frequency from multiple times per week to less than once weekly cuts weekly added calories often by several hundred to 1,000 calories, which over months reduces weight gain pressure and lowers the chronic inflammation signal. Swap methods such as oven baking, air frying at lower temperatures, steaming or grilling lower total oil uptake, and reduce formation of harmful oxidation products. If you eat fried foods out, favor venues that refresh oil regularly, avoid visibly dark or gummy oil, and choose smaller portions. Those actions lower exposure to trans fat residues and heat byproduct chemicals that help drive the inflammation and oxidative stress linked to prostate tissue changes. Number 5, sugary beverages. Sugary drinks include sodas, energy drinks, sweetened teas, many commercial fruit drinks, and some coffee shop beverages with added sugar. These drinks deliver rapid, high glycemic loads without fiber or protein, so blood glucose and insulin spike sharply after intake. Repeated spikes promote insulin resistance over time, which is linked to higher circulating insulin and related growth factors, a metabolic environment that favors tissue growth and inflammation. Large systematic reviews and meta-analyses consistently show that sugar-sweetened beverages, SSBs, promote weight gain and raise risk for metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. One global analysis estimated SSBs were responsible for millions of new metabolic disease cases annually across regions. For numbers, randomized and cohort data show regular drinking of SSBs, 1 or more servings daily, is linked to measurable weight gain over a year versus low SSB intake. Meta-analyses often quantify the effect as a significant positive association with body weight change. Obesity and insulin resistance are independently linked to worse prostate outcomes and increased prostate volume in aging men. Because sugary beverages increase those risks, they are a clear target. A simple rule: replacing one 12-ounce, 355 milliliters, sugar-sweetened drink with water each day reduces added sugar intake by roughly 30 to 40 grams and cuts 120 to 150 kilocalories. Over a month, that creates a meaningful caloric deficit. Herbal teas, sparkling water with fruit, or unsweetened coffee are practical substitutions that stabilize blood sugar and reduce the chronic insulin and inflammation signal that affects prostate tissue. Number 4, refined carbohydrates. Refined carbohydrates, white bread, many pastries, white rice in large portions, sugary cereals, and most packaged snack foods are stripped of fiber and micronutrients, so they are absorbed quickly and cause rapid blood glucose and insulin responses. Repeated rapid glucose insulin cycles contribute to insulin resistance and chronic low-grade inflammation. The glycemic load concept helps quantify the effect. High GL meals raise average postprandial glucose and insulin for hours after eating. Over months and years, that persistent metabolic load increases the risk of central adiposity, higher fasting insulin, and unfavorable lipid profiles. Those metabolic changes are associated with increased prostate volume and symptomatic prostate conditions in population studies. In addition, refined carbs promote overeating because they fail to provide sustained satiety that increases total daily caloric intake and weight gain. For numbers, switching from high GI white bread to a whole grain alternative can lower post-meal glucose peaks by 20 to 40% depending on the portion and product. Choosing whole grains, legumes, and vegetables reduces the average glycemic load of meals and improves insulin regulation. Over a year, these shifts contribute to smaller waist circumference and lower fasting insulin in many trials. Practical guidance: prioritize whole grains, brown rice, oats, quinoa, replace pastries and white bread with whole grain versions, and pair starchy foods with protein and fiber to blunt glucose spikes. Those steps lower the hormonal and inflammatory drivers that affect prostate tissue. Number 3, artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners, non-nutritive sweeteners, such as sucralose, aspartame, saccharin, and some newer sweeteners, are widely used to cut calories while maintaining sweetness. The evidence on long-term metabolic and gut effects is mixed and evolving. Some controlled trials show little or no change in glucose tolerance from short exposures, while other trials and animal studies show that certain sweeteners can alter gut bacterial composition and glucose handling when given at or near commonly consumed doses. A recent body of work points to 2 takeaways. A, some sweeteners appear to change gut microbial balance in ways that could raise low-grade inflammation or alter glucose absorption in susceptible people. And B, real-world use often leads people to compensate by eating more or choosing high-calorie foods elsewhere, which negates the calorie benefit. For prostate health, the connection is indirect. If artificial sweetener use leads to higher overall calorie intake, weight gain, or altered insulin handling that creates the same metabolic stresses, higher insulin inflammation, that affect prostate size and symptoms. The numbers are inconsistent. Clinical trials show varied effects, with only a subset demonstrating measurable microbiome changes at realistic doses. The prudent approach is moderation. If you use non-nutritive sweeteners occasionally and keep total energy intake and weight stable, risk is likely low. If you rely on them daily while consuming many processed foods, the net metabolic effect may be unfavorable. Natural low-calorie alternatives like stevia and monk fruit have different metabolic profiles and less evidence of microbiome disruption in short trials, but long-term data are still limited. For anyone concerned about prostate health, minimizing overall sweet taste preference, lowering total added sweeteners, and focusing on whole foods is a conservative, measurable way to reduce downstream metabolic risk. Number 2, alcohol. Alcohol affects prostate health through several related pathways: hormone metabolism, liver strain, systemic inflammation, and effects on body fat and metabolic control. Alcohol alters sex hormone metabolism in the liver and can change circulating estrogen and androgen ratios. It also raises oxidative stress and inflammatory cytokines when consumed in excess. Heavy and binge drinking patterns are most consistently linked to increased risk for aggressive prostate outcomes in epidemiologic analyses. While light to moderate drinking shows mixed results across studies, heavier consumption patterns, daily heavy drinking, or frequent binge episodes are associated with higher rates of advanced prostate disease and worse outcomes after diagnosis in multiple reports. Another concrete point: alcohol impairs liver function when consumed heavily, and the liver is the primary organ that clears hormones and many toxins. Impaired liver function can therefore raise circulating hormone or toxin levels that affect prostate cells. For actionable numbers, many studies identify heavy drinking as multiple drinks per day or a high weekly total. In those groups, relative risk for advanced prostate outcomes rises in several cohort comparisons. Reducing alcohol intake to lower weekly totals, avoiding binge patterns, or choosing alcohol-free days each week reduces systemic inflammation and liver strain and has measurable benefits for metabolic and prostate health markers. If you are being treated for prostate disease, discussing alcohol intake with a clinician is sensible because heavy alcohol can interact with medications and affect recovery. Number 1, high saturated fat foods, fast food, and fried snacks. This category overlaps with several earlier items but deserves its own long focus because these foods are concentrated sources of saturated and trans fats, refined carbohydrates, salt, and additives, a combination that promotes obesity, metabolic dysfunction, and chronic inflammation. Fast food meals and packaged fried snacks are engineered for high palatability and easy overconsumption. They raise total caloric intake, push up LDL cholesterol, and increase visceral fat. Obesity is strongly associated with greater prostate volume, more severe urinary symptoms, and higher rates of advanced prostate disease in some cohorts. Prevalence numbers put this in context. Benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH, affects roughly half of men by age 60 and up to 80 to 90% of men by age 85. Obesity and metabolic syndrome raise the chance that a man will have symptomatic or progressive prostate enlargement. At the population level, reducing intake of high saturated fat fast food and replacing it with whole foods reduces daily caloric load and improves lipid and inflammatory markers within weeks to months. For example, cutting one fast food meal per week and replacing it with a balanced home-cooked meal reduces weekly added calories by several hundred to over 1,000 kilocalories, and repeated over months, this change affects waist circumference and fasting insulin. Practical targets: limit fast food meals, choose whole food snacks, nuts in moderation, fruit, and prioritize home cooking with lean proteins, vegetables, and whole grains. That approach lowers the chronic inflammation and hormonal disruption that most strongly link diet to prostate enlargement and symptomatic progression. If this video helped you, share it with a friend or family member who might be struggling in silence. And don't forget to subscribe because we've got even more natural health secrets coming that Big Pharma doesn't want you to know. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.